Today we're going to talk about uppers, chapter 3. It's a huge chapter, but a lot of it are just a lot of the slides are just individual slides. So we're going to talk about uppers today. Uppers, speed, crystal meth, amphetamines, um, cocaine. Uh, One of the things about this is really kind of interesting. When I first started teaching up in Montana on the Fort Belknap Reservation, they had a really serious problem with crystal meth. By the time I left, I was there for 10 years, and by the time I left, it was over with. And there were two reasons why it happened. One, a lot of the individuals were incarcerated. Some of the individuals died who were using the crystal meth, and the federal government came in and had a task force that came through and arrested the people that were making the crystal meth, and it by the time I left, it wasn't really a problem at all. Um, Seems to be the same thing that's happening on the Navajo Nation. When I first got here, it was a really serious problem. It's not nearly as serious now. A lot of the individuals don't live a long time, and that's one of the reasons. The other reasons has to do with the federal government coming in and busting the manufacturers. In 2008, 5.6 million Americans used cocaine or cocaine products. 1.4 million Americans used methamphetamines for non-medicinal purposes. 83 million Americans used a tobacco product in 2008. 166 million Americans drank coffee last year. Most of them drank caffeine daily. Americans averaged 56 gallons of soft drinks per person in 2008, most of them caffeinated. That is 598 12-ounce cans of whatever you're drinking, or 359 20-ounce bottles of pop. In 2008, 200 million people used betel nut. They brew it and drink it like coffee, or they chew it. And of course, it turns your teeth a lovely color, a lovely shade of red to black. In Southeast Asia, especially Thailand, the area is having a severe problem with a form of methamphetamine called yaba. In the area around the Horn of Africa, the majority of the male population and much of the female population chew khat, a mild stimulant. 1.3 billion people worldwide smoke cigarettes. There are natural stimulants out there. Cocaine comes from the coca shrub. Nicotine comes from the tobacco plant. Cathinone comes from the khat bush. Ephedrine comes from the Ephedra bush. Aracholine comes from betel nut, and caffeine, of course, comes from the coffee plant. Synthesized stimulants, methamphetamines are synthesized. Diet pills are mostly amphetamines. Methylphenidate, Ritalin is a manufactured stimulant, and methcathinone is a manufactured stimulant. Stimulants increase the activity in the central nervous system. They boost your energy. They raise heart rate and blood pressure. They increase respiration. They reduce appetite. They subdue your thirst. They may make the user more alert, more active, more confident, more anxious, more restless, more aggressive. Stimulants are used to treat narcolepsy, obesity, and ADHD. Stimulants work by affecting four neurotransmitters. Epinephrine increases your energy. Norepinephrine increases confidence, feelings of well-being, and motivation. Serotonin increases your energy, and dopamine increases your energy as well. So those are the four neurotransmitters they affect: epinephrine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine. Most of the neurons affected by epinephrine and norepinephrine are located in an area of the midbrain called the locus ceruleus. This portion of the brain networks with many parts of the rest of the brain. The locus ceruleus it has been targeted as one of the areas that may cause ADHD, the locus ceruleus. When the body needs an extra jolt of energy, epinephrine and norepinephrine are released to provide the energy. When the individual takes uppers, it forces a release of the energy chemicals. These drugs cause the body to react to stress that doesn't exist and makes the individual talkative, hyperactive, and hypervigilant, kind of like Barney Fife. The stronger the stimulant, the longer it takes the body to recover. Larger quantities over long periods of time deplete the body's energy stores and leaves the body without reserves. Withdrawal from stimulants can create severe depression that can last for days, weeks, or months. People tend to build a fairly rapid tolerance to the stimulant, forcing the individual to consume more and more of the substance. Even coffee will require more and more with increased consumption. The reward reinforcement pathway is a natural structure that informs the individual of an activity or substance that supports survival. Hunger satiated, thirst satiated, sexual desire satiated. When a strong stimulant is used, it overstimulates the reward reinforcement pathway, and the body doesn't respond to hunger, thirst, or sexual activity. The brain cannot be satisfied at this point because of this drug. It tells the brain that it is not satisfied. And this is an individual, this is what she looked like prior to going on meth, I think, or maybe it was cocaine. Anyway, as you can see, she doesn't look exactly the same. As more and more of the stimulant is used, tolerance builds and the rush and stimulation diminishes. But what does remain is the emotional memory of the effects of the stimulant. This is accomplished by the dopamine stimulation and the reward reinforcement pathway. One of the side effects of long-term stimulant usage can be dehydration and malnourishment. The hypothalamus regulates thirst and hunger. Stimulants fool this part of the brain to think that the individual is neither hungry or thirsty. This can lead to deficiencies of vitamins and minerals as well as damage to the teeth. And this is an individual, this is what she looked like in 1995. 7 years later, this is what she looked like. As you can see, you can watch her degenerate or age very rapidly over time. Most people in 7 years, they don't change this drastically. She looks like an older woman. Stimulants, including the weaker ones like nicotine and caffeine, induce vascular spasms and constrict blood flow to organs and tissue. Heavy smokers will have a pasty complexion due to the restricted blood flow. This restricted blood flow will slow tissue repair and the healing process. Chronic use of stimulants will weaken blood vessels, increasing the risk of stroke. But at least the stimulant user has increased confidence and stimulated feelings of euphoria. They become talkative, they become restless, they become irritable, they can't sleep, they are paranoid, they are overly aggressive, and they tend to be violent. Prolonged use of high doses of methamphetamine can lead to a clinical level of paranoia or kick the individual into psychosis. Meth increases the dopamine in the central nervous system. One of the conditions of schizophrenia is an overabundance of dopamine receptor sites. Sometimes the meth user will drift into permanent schizophrenia. Nicotine provides almost immediate tolerance. All stimulants in a slower but similar manner develop tolerance rapidly. Dependence is developed with tolerance since the need becomes greater and greater. Nicotine has the strongest dependence level of all the drugs. Cocaine is synthesized from the coca leaf. Since its introduction in South America with the invasion of the Incas in Peru, it has enjoyed epidemics and lag periods. The first epidemic was at the end of the 19th century. The famous author Robert Louis Stevenson wrote the novel The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in 6 days while taking cocaine as a treatment for his tuberculosis. Many have speculated that the two personalities represented in the novel actually represented Stevenson on and off the stimulant. Stevenson may have written the novel to explain to friends his change of personality. Cocaine won't grow just anywhere like marijuana does. Cocaine grows in the moderately high slopes of the Andes Mountains. This includes Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Colombia, some on the island of Java in Indonesia, but mostly it's in the Andes, as you can see from all the countries that are affected. Coca leaves don't contain very much alkaloid cocaine. 1 acre of 6 to 8 foot bushes will only produce 1.5 to 2 kilograms, or 3 to 4.5 pounds. Cocaine refinement begins with stage 1, soaking the leaves in alkali and water. Stage 2 of cocaine refinement is where the workers add gasoline, acetone, or kerosene to create a paste. Stage 3 involves discarding the waste leaves and adding an acid, hydrochloric acid, or sulfuric acid. In stage 4, the cocaine paste is mixed with lime and ammonia. The last stage is separating the cocaine hydrochloride from the paste, and this is the dust that you get from it. Smuggling cocaine into the United States has been a constant cat and mouse game between smugglers and the DEA since the 1970s. During the Reagan administration, a friend of the president's was killed by smugglers to steal his yacht, and since then, the military has been used to stop mass shipments coming in by plane and shipped from South America. Today, there is only one sure route into the United States, and that is along the porous border with Mexico. Colombian drug cartels smuggle about 2/3 of their produce in this manner. The last third continues to come over by sea. North America consumes 40 to 50% of the world's cocaine. It is estimated that Americans spent $36.1 billion on cocaine in 2004. In 2019, the figure was $150 billion on cocaine. Cocaine in the United States averages 84% purity, with prices ranging from $12,000 to $35,000 per kilogram, about 2.2 pounds, and that's a kilo of cocaine, and so that's worth anywhere between $12,000 and $35,000. There are 1,000 grams in a kilogram. The street value of 1 gram of cocaine is $50 to $200, with an average purity of about 57%. And that's what they call a dime bag. It's because it's about as the size of a dime. A dime bag of cocaine will cost you $50 to $200. Crack cocaine comes in rocks of from 1/10 of a gram to 1/2 a gram, and sell for $10 to $20 each rock. Hardcore cocaine users will spend an average of $186 per week on cocaine. Cocaine is actually cheaper than it ever has been. It is estimated that there are probably over 3 million hardcore cocaine users in the United States. The man to the left is pitchman Billy Mays, who OD'd on cocaine at age 51. He was loud. He was very boisterous, very energetic, but part of that may have been the cocaine that he was snorting. And he's no longer with us, of course. When the Spanish first arrived in South America, they found many people in the Andes Mountains chewing coca leaves. Most Incan users actually mixed the juice with lime from ground shell or ash to accelerate their introduction of the alkaloid into the brain. Introduction occurs in 3 to 5 minutes. This is the Inca Trail, the famous Inca Trail in Peru. I've been right here. I've been there. Standing right where those guys are standing. The conquistadores encouraged use of coca to increase the productivity of their Quichua workers. In 1859, Albert Newman isolated the active ingredient in coca leaves, cocaine hydrochloride. He isolated this substance. This substance was 200 times more powerful by weight than the coca leaf. So if you go to Peru today, you can buy coca leaf off the street. It's not illegal, of course. You can go to the grocery store and buy coca tea. It's not very strong, of course. Obviously, it's 200 times less strong than cocaine is. The drug was first used as an anesthetic and as a medicine to treat depression, tuberculosis, gastric disorder, and asthma. Cocaine wine was popular in France and Italy in the late 1860s. This ushered in the first modern cocaine epidemic, as 2 glasses of wine delivered the same amount of cocaine as a line of coke. It took 15 to 30 minutes for the cocaine to take effect after ingesting in this manner. By the 1880s, patented medicines and drinks began to appear laced with cocaine, opium, morphine, heroin, cannabis, and alcohol. Since no one really understood addiction or the real power of the supplements in their tonics, many people became addicted, especially women. People began introducing cocaine into their systems in new ways. Injecting intravenously introduces the drug into the system in 30 seconds. Snorting cocaine introduces the substance into the blood in 2 to 5 minutes. Snorting more cocaine is counterproductive as the drug is a vasoconstrictor. So once introduced into the nasal passage, it slows the absorption of any new cocaine because the blood vessels are totally constricted. As the cocaine wears off, the nasal passage opens back up, causing a runny and sniffling nose. Smoking, cocaine-laced cigarettes were introduced in 1914, but the high temperature of the cigarette destroyed most of the psychoactive substance in the cocaine, and it didn't work. Because cocaine is a natural substance, it tends to be metabolized very quickly, and its effects dissipate much faster than synthetic stimulants. The half-life of cocaine is 30 to 90 minutes and is detectable in the urine for up to 36 hours after ingestion. Cocaine is used as a topical anesthetic because of its powerful vasoconstriction capabilities. Since cocaine receptors are found in the smooth muscles of the lungs, cocaine use will cause the bronchi to dilate. Synthetic cocaine products mimic the effects of cocaine for eye, dental, and cutaneous surgeries. That would be lidocaine, procaine, xylocaine, and of course the infamous Novocaine. Cocaine excites the user by blocking the reuptake of neurotransmitters acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. The abundance of these neurotransmitters gives the individual a feeling of well-being, mastery, omnipotence, euphoria, and general excitement. Cocaine metabolizes fairly rapidly, leaving the 4 neurotransmitters vulnerable to reuptake when the cocaine is gone. Cocaine's positive effects disappear fairly suddenly after 5 or 10 minutes. This absence of the previous feelings is referred to as the crash and may last for hours, days, or even weeks. Cocaine overstimulates the release of dopamine. If this occurs over time, it triggers the fright center in the brain, causing paranoia. Cocaine also overstimulates the release of epinephrine and norepinephrine. If this occurs over time, the individual may suffer from lethargy, low blood pressure, and anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. Anhedonia, a fascinating word meaning no pleasure. Cocaine causes the overstimulation of serotonin, which not only makes the individual happy, but increases sexual activity as well. If this continues to happen over time, the individual may suffer from insomnia, agitation, and severe emotional depression. Cocaine blocks the metabolism of acetylcholine, increasing your alertness, your memory, and your aggression. If overstimulation occurs over time, the person may suffer from tremors, memory lapses, mental confusion, and possibly hallucinations. Some people actually use cocaine as an aphrodisiac, since at low doses it enhances sexual desire and prolongs ejaculation. However, in some cases, it causes spontaneous ejaculation. In higher doses and with chronic use, cocaine may cause erectile dysfunction and a disinterest in sex. The lack of sexual need may lead to high risk sexual behavior and unusual sexual practices, since sexual need no longer exists for the individual. For cocaine users who are prone to violence, cocaine makes them more aggressive and violent because inhibitory functions are suppressed in the cingulate gyrus and the temporal lobes. Emotional triggers are overstimulated in the amygdala. The fright center is hyperactivated in the limbic system. When cocaine is combined with alcohol, the result is a substance called cocaethylene, which causes increased agitation, euphoria, and violence. In one study of domestic violence, all the perpetrators had used alcohol on the day of the violence, and 67% had used cocaine with the alcohol. Cocaethylene is also more likely to induce heart conduction anomalies that may lead to a heart attack. This substance has a half-life 3 times that of cocaine and therefore can cause prolonged high blood pressure. This is really dangerous stuff. So mixing alcohol and cocaine, real dumb idea. It can make you violent. It can make you feel good, of course, but it can also make you quite violent, and it endangers you. It makes it more likely that you'll have a heart attack or a stroke. While the brain gains feelings of euphoria and well-being from cocaine, the heart is being abused by the substance. Cocaine causes the heart rate to increase and the blood vessels to constrict, raising blood pressure 20 to 30 units. Small muscle repair stops during use. The stress on the heart and the muscle damage being done by its use can cause damage to the heart muscle, coronary arteries, and other blood vessels of the heart. Prolonged high blood pressure weakens blood vessel walls in the brain, leading to stroke. Cocaine also causes a curious condition where calcium and fat deposits collect in blood vessels, causing heart attacks or strokes. Really dumb to use this stuff. The probability that you're going to have a heart attack and stroke are increased exponentially. Cocaine crosses the placental barrier, meaning that when mom uses, her fetus uses also within seconds. Damage is done to the fetus's blood vessels in a similar reaction to that of the mother and may result in miscarriage, stroke, placental separation, or sudden infant death syndrome. One study looking at 717 babies born to cocaine-using mothers found that they were born on an average 1.2 weeks early, 1.2 pounds lighter, 1 inch shorter, a head that is 3/4 of an inch smaller in circumference. The babies were born agitated, irritable, with high blood pressure. The baby is usually malnourished because that is the lifestyle of the cocaine and amphetamine user. They don't eat, they don't drink, they don't need to. They feel like they don't need to. Well, when you're pregnant, now your baby is malnourished. Escaping from the cocaine-soaked placental environment does not remove the child from danger. Stimulant users are often inattentive and uncaring about the needs of others, and this includes their infants, which results in emotional deprivation for the child, neglect of the child, and bonding problems. Studies show that rates of mental delays are double among stimulant-exposed children. All is not bleak with concentrated postnatal care. These infants catch up with their peers by toddlerhood. Tolerance of the euphoric effects begins with the first usage of cocaine. Increased usage has been seen of 25 times the level within days. This is due to the adaptation of the brain to dopamine stimulation in the nucleus accumbens. Tolerance is to the euphoric effect only, since paranoia increases, as does cardiovascular effects. Withdrawal from cocaine use is very real, despite the misperceptions of the researchers into the 1990s. All the crash symptoms become accentuated and prolonged depending on the dosage used, the frequency of use, and the length of use. And the symptoms of the crash are anhedonia, lack of energy, emotional depression, loss of motivation, anxiety, vivid and unpleasant dreams, insomnia, increased appetite, psychomotor agitation, intense craving for the drug. Cycle of quitting and relapse of stimulants. After a binge session with the drug, the individual crashes, sleeps for a prolonged period, awakens with renewed energy, and swears off the drug forever. The individual feels better for a few days and begins to feel as they did before they began using the drug. 7 to 10 days after quitting, the craving starts to build, energy levels drop, emotional depression sets in as they can find no pleasure in their surroundings. After a couple of weeks or a month, they relapse, not being able to deal with the depression or the ever-increasing craving. While cocaine overdoses are common because of the rapid metabolization, the effects are rarely fatal. In large city emergency rooms in 2004, 41% of visits were due to cocaine usage, because the individual felt as if they were dying. The U.S. averages between 2,000 to 3,000 stimulant deaths every year, either from the initial stimulatory stage that causes seizures, hypertension, hyperthermia, stroke, or tachycardia. Tachycardia is that rapid heartbeat. Or later with the depression stage from extreme respiratory depression and coma. Some people will experience inverse tolerance where they become more sensitive to cocaine's effects. Long-term cocaine or amphetamine usage may lead to tactile hallucinations called formications, the sensation that tiny bugs are crawling on the user's skin. The user will sometimes scratch themselves bloody, trying to rid themselves of the imaginary pests. What's happening is the hair follicles are standing up. One of the ways that you can tell if somebody is an amphetamine speed user, methamphetamine user, cocaine user, they tend to shave all the hair off their bodies. So they'll shave the hair on their arms, they'll shave their heads. They'll shave, if they have hair on their chest, they'll shave their chest. They'll shave their pubes. They'll shave their legs. They get rid of all their hair because of the formication. As long as their body is bald, then they don't really have any problems with this. But as soon as the hair starts to grow, they have to scratch. The hair will stand on end, and because the hair is sticking straight out, any kind of wind or any kind of stimulation moves that hair, and it really, really irritates the individual. They think that they're being covered in ants or something. It's really kind of bizarre. Cocaine and amphetamine usage may also cause dental problems for the user. This is usually caused from poor nutrition, poor dental hygiene, and the acidic effects of the drug. The individual also tends to suffer dehydration that causes the gums to recede. Seizures are sometimes caused by excessive cocaine or amphetamine usage. 2 to 10% of cocaine users will have seizures, 3 times more women than men. Cocaine and amphetamine users can sometimes suffer from gastrointestinal problems, gastric ulcers, retroperitoneal fibrosis, visceral infarction, intestinal ischemia, gastrointestinal tract perforation, and colonic ischemia. Ischemia is small blood clots. Another possible side effect of cocaine usage comes from dopamine changes in the cerebellum from cocaine or amphetamine toxicity. The individual suffers from involuntary writhing, flailing, jerking, or sinuous movements of the arms and legs. This is sometimes referred to as meth or crack dancing, and this is a video of that very thing.
What we have is a claim by the plaintiff that the defendant is obligated to her for failure to pay back rentals, utilities, and also for the cost of a, DNA paternity test
Watch how much
the two of them engaged in. Apparently, the two of them have taken the test and directed that it be furnished to me for my inspection with whomever. Well, in other words, if he's not the father, then she pays. If he is the father, she gets paid.
You'll be paying.
That's good.
Yeah. That's good.
Don't get in here.
That ain't bad.
Don't get in here. Show out.
Well, yes,
I'm not gonna try it in the court.
Well, just chill just a little.
Yes, sir.
bit, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Your Honor. Judge Joe Brown.
You know how to act better.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I ain't trying to show out.
Stop. Would you stop?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, I'll try not.
Can you hold still, or are you under the influence?
Under the influence.
Hey,
Under the influence.
not right now.
Under the influence.
But that woman there, she done drove me down influence a lot of things that I said I'd never do.
He gonna lie.
How can I? When it's the truth. God knows.
Oh, God.
I wouldn't bring him into it.
You please.
Excuse me. How would you take care of him if officially you're unemployed?
Thank
What's
you.
your
I wasn't employed then.
You were unemployed.
I wasn't unemployed then.
Yes, you were.
But I was selling.
No, excuse me, Your Honor. He was doing that, but he was receiving his daughter's Social Security check for her mother's death, and he wasn't giving me none like that.
Everybody
Excuse me. Were you? Let him go. Let him
telling
keep
the truth.
talking.
I'm telling the truth. Okay, just ma'am.
Miss Jones, let him go. I have a purpose. You're showing a classic example. All that kinetic movement from having too much energy.
This just, I'm sorry, but it's just hard on me when someone
showing
says
the
something.
residual effects from. So you've already said that you were moving merchandise.
I'm not lying. I'm not denying. I'm here to tell the truth. Didn't I say? Didn't I raise my right hand? I don't care who hear the truth. The only one can condemn me is God. But Your Honor,
you may get a little remark. He worketh in mysterious ways.
Don't he? Don't he?
Yes.
He does. He works through you right now. Whatever you decide.
Okay, that's crack dancing. That's what it looks like. As much fun as that was. Schizophrenia is caused from too much dopamine in the mesolimbic pathway. It is normally caused by a hereditary imbalance or a disease state that affects this area. Since cocaine and amphetamines increase dopamine in this area, it can trigger stimulant-induced paranoid schizophrenia. The main effects are auditory, visual, or tactile hallucinations and paranoid delusions. Stimulant-induced psychosis is impossible to differentiate from organic psychosis. Psychotic symptoms may disappear with abstinence, but it may take hours, days, or even months. 1/3 to 1/2 of chronic cocaine users will develop mild transient paranoia with repeated use after a psychotic episode. Smaller and smaller doses will trigger psychotic episodes. And I had a student when I was up in Montana who was a meth user, and she had gone off. She'd gotten arrested and thrown in jail and couldn't get her meth in jail. So when she got out, she hadn't used in a year and a half. So when she got out, her father was in the hospital, and she had to go to the big city in Montana, Great Falls, Montana. And when she went there, every time she goes to Great Falls, she uses, and she used this time, and she had a psychotic episode. And when she was in her psychotic episode, I'm sorry that I'm laughing about this. She thought that she was Hispanic. She's not Hispanic. She, of course, is an American Indian. But she thought she was Hispanic. She started speaking as if she were speaking Spanish. It wasn't Spanish at all. They brought in an interpreter as weird. She went to the police, and she said that her father had murdered her mother and had buried her in the backyard. And she swore an affidavit out, and of course they went to check on the house that she sent them to. They dug up the backyard. It was a bogus address. They dug up somebody's backyard. They didn't find anything, of course, because she was having a psychotic episode. After about a day and a half, she returned to normal. Her psychotic episode stopped, and she realized who she was. It had turned out that her father had died, and her mother was still alive, but she had said that her mother had died and her father was still alive. And she sent them out looking for this guy who didn't exist, actually. got in a lot of trouble because of it. They put her in rehab, trying to take care of her situation. She had two boys she needed to take care of. Polydrug use is very common among cocaine users because the individual may need chemical assistance to come down off their stimulation. The most common drugs used with cocaine are alcohol, heroin, sedative hypnotics, and nicotine. A person who smokes cigarettes is 22 times more likely to use cocaine than a non smoker. While the purity of cocaine coming into the country averages 80 to 90%, most marketed cocaine has been cut with substances to increase profits. They use baby laxatives, lactose, vitamin B, aspirin, mannitol, sugar, tetracaine, or procaine to cut the cocaine. Injecting any drug is dangerous, but injecting street drugs is especially so. The user can never be sure of the purity of the drug. The drug may be contaminated with dangerous substances that are not meant to be introduced into the human body. Bacteria and viruses may be introduced. 50 to 90% of IV drug users are infected with hepatitis C from using contaminated needles. Manufacturers and refiners of cocaine have known that in the paste or freebase state, cocaine could be smoked without destroying the euphoric properties. When freebase is mixed with marijuana and smoked, it is referred to as bazooka, busuco, or pasta. This form of ingestion gives the user a more intense and immediate effect than snorting. Crack or freebasing has four properties that make it a sought commodity. The melting point is higher, 195 degrees, as compared to the powder, which melts at 98 degrees. It reaches the brain faster when smoked. This form is more readily absorbed by the fat cells in the brain, giving it a more intense reaction. Higher doses of cocaine can be ingested in a shorter period of time. Any smoked cocaine product will produce a more intense effect than snorted cocaine. This is true even though most of the cocaine product is lost in the air, 75% in a pipe and 50% in a cigarette. Hence, more cocaine has to be smoked to get a strong effect. Even when cocaine is smoked or injected, the drug is metabolized rapidly, 15 to 20 minutes, and must be renewed to get a strong effect. Crack gives a rush that only lasts a few seconds, and euphoria and excitation that only lasts a few minutes, 5 to 20 minutes. As soon as the effect dissipates, the individual feels irritable, dysphoric, which is another word for uneasy, and anxious. For this reason, crack is almost always smoked in a binge pattern. Crack does have some fairly unpleasant side effects. Makes you thirsty, makes you cough, gives you tremors, dry skin, slurred speech, blurred vision, crack keratitis, which is an abrasion of the eye because the crack pipe is so short. The eye is very close to the crack pipe. Cracked thumb hand or hands, burns on your hands, and callus on the thumb from lighting a crack pipe. Crack burns, facial burns from lighting the pipe. Psychological side effects of smoking crack: paranoia, craving for the drug, asocial behavior, attention problems, irritability, drug dreams, hyperexcitability, visual and auditory hallucinations, depression, cocaine psychosis, high-risk sexual behavior. Respiratory side effects from smoking crack: chest pains, pneumonia, coughs, cracked lung, decreased ability to diffuse CO2, hemorrhaging, respiratory failure, death due to anesthetization of the respiratory center in the medulla. Crack or freebase can be mixed with marijuana to create caviar, champagne, grimmies, fry daddies, cocoa puffs, hubba, or woolies, and that is what they call it. Users may combine crack with PCP or ketamine to make space basing, whack, tragic magic. Mixing crack with tar heroin creates speedballs, hot rocks, Belushi rocks. The reason it's called Belushi rocks is because John Belushi overdosed and died from speedballs. He was speedballing. So did what's his name? Come on, Chris Farley. When crack or cocaine is mixed with wine, it is called crack coolers. In 2004, 4,500 deaths occurred from the direct and indirect effects of cocaine. Cocaine overdose doesn't always kill, but results in tachycardia and hyperventilation, accompanied by a feeling of impending death. Death usually results from cardiac arrest, seizure, stroke, respiratory failure, or hyperthermia. I have let's see, it's my niece. Her husband overdosed on, or he was, he normally used crystal meth, but she inherited money when my parents died. She inherited about $10,000, and he took it out and he bought some real expensive cocaine. He was when he snorted it, it was stronger than the crystal meth that he was used to, and it gave him a heart attack and he died. He was 39 years old. Social consequences: because using crack can lead to risky sexual behavior, children are sometimes produced in circumstances that are not optimum. Crack smokers have social problems and they don't relate to their own offspring any better. Crack smokers show high rates of neglect, abandonment, and abuse of their children. There are high rates of single and no parent families. Women willing to trade sex for crack are very common, and then it starts all over again. They get pregnant, and of course they have babies, and now we've got a continuing problem. Uh, One of the problems with women having children when they're crack addicts or cocaine addicts is that they will sell their children for sex. What does that mean? Are they actually selling them? Well, actually, they're selling them. They are giving people their children so that they can have sex with the children, and then they give the women money. This has happened on the reservation. It happened in Pinyon when, and this was a really serious problem. Can be a serious problem. The physical and mental effects of cocaine and amphetamines are similar. Cocaine is about twice as expensive. Cocaine gives a greater rush and more intense high than amphetamines, but amphetamines allow for more prolonged energy. Amphetamines' effect lasts 6 to 9 times longer. Amphetamines are more likely to cause addiction. Amphetamines are synthetic stimulants that provide similar effects as cocaine, but cheaper and more prolonged. Amphetamines are called uppers, speed, crack, crystal, ice, shabu, and glass are some of the common names for amphetamines. Amphetamines are snorted, they're injected, they are ingested orally. Worldwide, 33 million people used amphetamines and methamphetamines in 2003. Of course, this is almost 20 years ago. Speed used to come in several forms: amphetamines, cross tops, white crosses, cartwheels, biphetamine, black beauties, dexedrine, dexies, or beans. Benzedrine are known as bennies, and methadrine. Amphetamines were first synthesized in 1887. It was used by both sides during World War II. It was used as a diet pill in the 1950s and 1960s. The hippies fueled their psychedelic experience with street speed, marijuana, and LSD. Amphetamines became a Schedule II drug in 1970. Street chemists began producing crank, methamphetamine sulfate, and crystal methamphetamine hydrochloride in the 1980s and 1990s. These chemists were able to convert the active ingredients in cold medications, phenylpropanolamine, ephedrine, and pseudoephedrine into crank and crystal. In the 1990s, a new, stronger methamphetamine began to be produced called ice, glass, batu, or shabu. It's dextroisomer methamphetamine. This form later came to be known as crystal meth, tina, peanut butter, deadhead, chalk, tweak, yellow rock, glass, rose quartz, speed. When this first hit the streets, a lot of people overdosed, and the reason they overdosed is because um, this methamphetamine was crystal meth was a lot stronger. people didn't understand what was going on. They thought it was the same as it was before, and people were smoking too much of it or snorting too much of it, and they were dying. They were overdosing. The profile of the typical methamphetamine user is a white male between 19 and 40 years old. In the West, and especially Hawaii, an equal number of women abuse the drugs as men. Meth is particularly rampant in gay communities, where it is the third most popular drug after alcohol and marijuana. Amphetamines can be cooked in laboratory facilities. Initially, biker gangs cooked the drugs, Hells Angels and the Gypsy Jokers. Recently, Mexican gangs have taken over the manufacture. The DEA estimates that there are over 300 ways to manufacture methamphetamine from pseudoephedrine, and for this reason, cold medicine has been controlled and put behind the counter. Snorting methamphetamine is more toxic to the nasal mucosa than snorting cocaine and may cause irritation and pain. The most intense high comes from injecting amphetamines directly into the bloodstream. Sclerosis and pain often result from the injection. Methamphetamine is extremely bitter and takes much longer to get the effect to the brain. Amphetamines last 4 to 6 hours as compared to 10 to 90 minutes for cocaine. Amphetamines force the increase of the neurotransmitters norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine because it forces the release of these neurotransmitters from terminal vesicles. It reverses the reabsorption pumps, forcing more neurotransmitters into the synapse. Enzymes that metabolize the neurotransmitters are blocked by amphetamines. Prolonged use of amphetamines reduces the body's ability to produce the affected neurotransmitters. Research shows that norepinephrine reduction as long as 6 months after drug use has ceased. Research also shows, now remember, norepinephrine makes you feel good. Norepinephrine makes you feel like you can conquer the world. So if once you stop using amphetamines and your norepinephrine level will not go back to normal for at least 6 months. Research also shows a 24% reduction of dopamine, resulting in difficulty feeling pleasure. Thus, after heavy use, for the individual to feel normal, they have to use the drug in order to feel normal. Methamphetamine also causes a degeneration of serotonin-producing cells, meaning that the individual will potentially never feel as good as they did before they started using. Research of methamphetamine users found that they had an 11.3% reduction in the gray matter of their hippocampus, their cingulate gyrus, their paralimbic cortices. These areas affect craving, mood, emotions, and memory. However, brain on methamphetamines are actually larger due to swelling, even though the gray matter is smaller. Amphetamines cause increased energy, increased heart rate, raised blood temperature, rapid respiration, higher blood pressure, dilation of bronchial vessels, and appetite suppression. Binging on amphetamines can result in not sleeping for 3 to 10 days. Tolerance of amphetamine is fairly rapid and extreme, 15 to 30 milligrams. Long-term users may use as much as 5,000 milligrams a day. Long-term users may use, effects on these individuals, sleep deprivation, heart toxicity, blood vessel toxicity, and severe malnutrition. Come on. Overdose may result in convulsions, hyperthermia, cardiovascular collapse. Unlike most drugs, amphetamines are abused as much or more by women than men. This may lead to use during pregnancy, which results in irritable baby syndrome, intolerance to light and touch, tremors, muscle coordination problems, abnormal reflexes, sucking and swallowing problems, disturbed sleep. I was working in Omaha when cocaine became popular in the 1980s, and we started seeing this I worked in Children's Hospital, and we started seeing this in our babies. Really, really irritating. I'm sorry. It was really, really tragic. And that irritated us that these women couldn't not snort cocaine. And so that we started seeing a lot of anomalies. And I won't tell you what kind of anomalies we were seeing. Other problems that might occur for the baby born to a methamphetamine user is premature delivery, congenital deformities such as clubfoot or limb abnormalities, gastric problems, intestines protruding into the stomach, placental separation and hemorrhage being potentially lethal to both mother and baby, intrauterine brain hemorrhage and stroke, HIV, hepatitis B and C. We saw a lot of this stuff, and it was really quite unfortunate that's one of the things that happened. Wait a second. All right, and now we'll come back so that we get our arrow back. There we go. If the baby survives gestation, they may have developmental problems, growth and developmental delays, learning disabilities, increased incidence of ADHD, increased risks for rage disorder, greater incidence of sudden infant death syndrome. Disability rates range around 33%, and we saw that as well. Amphetamines produce mild, intense euphoria, alertness, sexual feelings, sense of well-being and confidence. After prolonged use, irritability, paranoia, anxiety, aggression, mental confusion, poor judgment, impaired memory, hallucinations. Since amphetamines cause an abundance of neurotransmitters that mimic sexual gratification, using the drug becomes a substitute for sexual activity. Amphetamines will also produce violence in people prone to violence because the drug causes people to be suspicious, paranoid, and overconfident. This proclivity for violence among meth users can lead to child abuse and neglect. In Oregon in 2004, 1,850 meth labs were busted, and a full 80% of child abuse and neglect cases involved meth users. Excessive methamphetamine usage can lead to amphetamine psychosis, just as with cocaine. Hallucinations, loss of contact with reality, speech patterns that are indistinguishable from paranoid schizophrenia. Since these symptoms are caused by excess dopamine released by the drug, psychotic episodes can be induced at fairly low doses in individuals prone to excess dopamine. Some individuals may have immediate psychosis, while others may use for years with no problem. Crystal meth seems to have the strongest effect on the brain chemistry, and since it has fewer cardiovascular effects, can be smoked in larger quantities. The result is more severe paranoia, hallucinations, hypervigilant thinking, suicidal depression, addictive use. 9.4% of children 2 to 17 in the United States have been diagnosed with ADHD in their lifetime. 8.1% of U.S. adults between 18 and 44 have been diagnosed with ADHD. 129 million children worldwide, 7.2%, have been diagnosed with ADHD. In 2016, 6,100,000 children have been diagnosed with ADHD, up from 4,400,000 and 203. So it's becoming more of a problem. ADHD is caused by a depletion of dopamine. Amphetamines are used to treat ADHD because they increase dopamine and block its metabolism. Methylphenidate, about 10 million prescriptions per year. Methylphenidate is the chemical name for Ritalin. D-amphetamine or Adderall, 7.7 million prescriptions per year. Atomoxetine, Strattera, 5.8 million prescriptions per year. Pimeline, Silert is another drug they give for ADHD. Amphetamines work on ADHD 75% of the time. Research shows that children taking amphetamine therapy for ADHD in the long term have an increased risk of alcohol and drug abuse as adults. Half of children with ADHD have comorbid ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. If left untreated, these individuals are more likely to progress to more serious problems such as stealing, vandalism, and arson. One of the main uses for amphetamines throughout the 20th century was as a diet pill. But every time a new drug hit the market, it seemed to cause its own set of problems. One such problem came with the two amphetamines, phentermine and fenfluramine, marketed as fen-phen. Given in tandem, the drugs caused heart valve damage in select women. In 1999, the drugs were taken off the market. Stimulants are and have been used all over the world for centuries. Khat was used in the Middle East, betel nut in the Far East, that is Asia, yohimbe in Africa, and ephedra in the Mediterranean area. Khat is a mild stimulant found in the Middle East. Smuggling of this drug in the United States has become more prevalent as more and more immigrants from that area come into the United States. The key stimulant in the leaf is cathinone, which evaporates if the leaf isn't used within 48 hours after harvesting. This substance is said to produce an effect between caffeine and methamphetamine. Methcathinone is a synthetic version of cathinone. This drug is used extensively in the Horn of Africa and on the Arabian Peninsula. In Yemen, half the population uses khat, and a family may spend 1/3 of their income on the drug. This drug is the driving force of the economies of many of the countries in the area, the Horn of Africa. The drug is used socially. Chronic khat use can cause physical exhaustion and suicidal depression when withdrawn. Synthetic cathinone is known as methcathinone. While this is only found sparingly in the United States, it is much more common in Europe. In fact, represents 20% of the illicit drug use in the Russian Republic. Methcathinone is much more intense than khat and is as addictive as methamphetamine. With this drug, there is more dopamine reduction, and so Parkinsonism is more common. Betel nuts come from the betel nut palm and are found all over southern Asia. It is used extensively in India, Pakistan, the Arab world, Taiwan, Malaysia, the Philippines, New Guinea, Polynesia, southern China, and Africa. Worldwide, 200 to 450 million people use betel nut. In Taiwan, 17% of men and 1% of women use the substance. One recent controversy in Taiwan is the betel nut beauties, who man betel nut kiosks while dressed provocatively to attract male customers. Some authorities are demanding more modesty for fear of compromising public morals. The active ingredient in betel nuts is aracholine, which induces an increase of epinephrine and norepinephrine in the central nervous system. This causes a mild euphoria, excitation, and a decrease of fatigue. The juice of the nut is dark red and stains the mouth red to black. Aracholine and muscarine are fairly toxic and cause mouth and esophagus irritation that might lead to cancer in the area. 7% of chronic users develop a cancer of the mouth. In India, betel nuts are mixed with sweetened tobacco to make a product known as gutka. Yohimbine is the extract from the yohimbe tree found in Africa. The tree is a member of the coffee family, and the extract is bitter and spicy and often brewed in a similar manner as coffee. The active ingredient in yohimbine is an alpha-2 adrenergic antagonist that increases the neurotransmitter norepinephrine. Yohimbine has been used for centuries as a mild aphrodisiac and sexual rejuvenator. Yohimbine's sexual side effects seem to stem from its ability to increase penile blood flow. It has been used to treat erectile dysfunction and is reputed to induce sexual arousal in women. The drug does increase blood pressure and heart rate. Male enhancement products include male performance, yohimbe power, manpower, Aphrodine. It is also found in Sobi Energy. Yohimbine serves as a local anesthetic. In larger doses, it may produce a mild euphoria and sometimes hallucinations. At toxic levels, it can produce paralysis of the respiratory system and death. Ephedra is a bush that grows in deserts all over the world. The drug that it produces is ephedrine. This drug is a mild to moderate stimulant that is used medicinally to treat asthma, narcolepsy, allergies, low blood pressure. Ephedrine is also known as Marwith and Ma Huang and has been used medicinally by the Chinese for 5,000 years. Ephedrine was first synthesized in 1885 and for decades was the only effective treatment for asthma. Ephedrine's effects are less severe than amphetamines, though a toxic level is more likely to lead to psychosis. Ephedrine and pseudoephedrine are the active ingredients in many cold products. They also make up the molecule that is converted to make methamphetamine and methcathinone. This substance has also been implicated in sports doping scandals and so is banned by the NFL and illegal in Ohio. The sale of cold remedies is now controlled to prevent the hoarding of enough of the substance to convert into the more destructive drugs. Caffeine is the most popular stimulant in the world. It's the most popular mood-altering drug in the world. It's the most popular habit-forming drug in the world. 85% of the people in the United States consume substantial amounts of caffeine every day, including me. Caffeine is naturally found in coffee, tea, and chocolate. Caffeine is put in many products to give us energy. It's put in soda pop, energy drinks, over-the-counter energy supplements. Water is the most widely consumed beverage in the world. Tea is the second most widely consumed beverage. Tea has been consumed in China for 4,700 years. Tea has become ritualized in many cultures like Japan and China. The English discovered tea from Portuguese traders, and the country became obsessed with it. To this day, 4 o'clock is tea time in England, when everyone stops and takes a spot of tea. Coffee was first cultivated in Ethiopia in 650 AD, and from there slowly spread into Europe, though along the way many cultures banned it as an intoxicant. In the United States, each coffee drinker consumes an average of 20 pounds of coffee a year. 8 ounces of brewed coffee will deliver about 135 milligrams of caffeine. 8 ounces of instant coffee will deliver about 95 milligrams of caffeine. 8 ounces of decaf coffee will deliver about 7 milligrams of caffeine. Archaeological evidence indicates that indigenous people in Central America brewed cocoa products as early as 2,600 years ago. From the Mayans, the practice spread to the rest of South and Central America. Power brokers, the Aztecs and the Incans. Cocoa was originally marketed in Europe as an aphrodisiac, but soon became merely a candy. Cocoa has a small amount of caffeine, but other active ingredients in the substance act as stimulants as well. One of them is theobromine. In the late 19th and early 20th century, manufacturers of cola soft drinks replaced cocaine with caffeine as an energy booster. Some of the caffeine comes from the cola nut from the African cola tree, but most of it today comes from caffeine removed from decaffeinated coffee. Energy drinks began with the invention of Red Bull in 1987. Red Bull delivers 80 milligrams of caffeine in an 8.3 ounce can. Red Bull also contains taurine, ginseng, guarana, glucose, B-complex vitamins, minerals, and carbohydrates. 8 ounces of brewed coffee delivers 135 milligrams of caffeine. I keep saying that. So the Adrenaline Rush also delivers 80 milligrams of caffeine in an 8.3 ounce can. Starbucks 2X shot delivers a whopping 105 milligrams of caffeine in just a 6.5 ounce can. 12 ounces of Mountain Dew delivers 54 milligrams of caffeine. 12 ounces of Dr. Pepper delivers 41 milligrams of caffeine. 12 ounces of Pepsi Cola delivers 38 milligrams of caffeine. 12 ounces of Coca-Cola delivers 35 milligrams of caffeine. 16 ounces of Rockstar delivers 240 milligrams of caffeine. 16 ounces of Full Throttle delivers 200 milligrams of caffeine. 16 ounces of Monster delivers 160 milligrams of caffeine. 16 ounces of Mountain Dew Kickstart delivers 90 milligrams of caffeine. A new phenomenon that has hit the bar scene is to drink vodka mixed with Red Bull. This is known as birch. It is reputed that this mixture will slow the process of getting drunk and results in less of a hangover the next morning. But that is not anywhere close to being true. Deaths due to overconsumption of Red Bull have led to banning the drink in several countries. Red Bull is illegal in France, Denmark, and Canada. Guarana is the national drink of Brazil. Guarana comes from the guarana shrub, which produces beans that have about 2 times the caffeine as coffee beans. The Brazilian drink normally delivers about 30 milligrams of caffeine in a 12-ounce can. Mate is a plant whose leaves are brewed like tea. Mate is the national drink of Argentina and delivers between 35 and 130 milligrams of caffeine per 8-ounce serving. 3% of the world's caffeine comes from mate. Caffeine is a very bitter chemical. It's an alkaloid in a class of chemicals called xanthines. It is found in more than 60 plants around the world. The half-life of caffeine is 3 to 7 hours. It takes 15 to 35 hours for caffeine to clear the system. Swedes average 425 milligrams of caffeine per day. The English average 445 milligrams of caffeine per day. Americans average 211 milligrams of caffeine a day. 70% is from tea, 16% from soft drinks, 60% is from coffee. About half of all Americans drink 3.3 cups of coffee a day. 20% of U.S. adults consume more than 350 milligrams of caffeine per day. 3% of U.S. adults drink more than 650 milligrams of caffeine per day. 65% of the 450 different soft drinks produced in the United States contain caffeine. Caffeine is used in several prescriptions and over-the-counter medications, bronchodilators, decongestants, diuretics, analgesics, alertness aids, appetite suppressants, menstrual pain controllers. As a vasoconstrictor, it can work on migraine headaches. Caffeine works by inhibiting the effect of adenosine. Adenosine is a neuromodulator that depresses mood, induces sleep, has anticonvulsant properties, causes low blood pressure, slows the heart rate, and dilates the blood vessels. Caffeine's effect is controlled by heredity. As it turns out, I'm not sensitive to caffeine. My dad wasn't sensitive to caffeine, and my son's not sensitive to caffeine. However, my brother is and my mother is. I'm not sure about my 2 sisters or my other brother, but we are not. My dad, my son, and I are not sensitive to caffeine. Doesn't do anything to us. Doesn't keep us awake. Doesn't do anything. To those sensitive to caffeine, 350 milligrams per day may cause anxiety, insomnia, gastric irritation, high blood pressure, nervousness, and flushed face. I said my mother and my brother are sensitive to caffeine. My mother, if she drank even half a cup of coffee, she'd have heart palpitations. My brother once drank a Mountain Dew on his way from Muncie, Indiana to Norfolk, Virginia, and he started hallucinating, and he ended up in Maine. Somehow he ended up in Maine when he finally figured out that what was going on. It has that effect on him. And of course, he told me, look, you got to stay away from this stuff. It's poison. But of course, it doesn't do anything to me. And my dad used to drink pot after pot of coffee with no effect at all. One study where subjects were given 500 milligrams of caffeine showed a 32% elevation of the stress hormones for an extended period of time. My dad had several heart surgeries, and when he did, they wouldn't let him have caffeine. Well, he drank all that coffee, so you would think that he would have all kinds of horrible things happening to him while he was in the hospital. Nothing. Didn't bother him a bit not to have any coffee. Caffeine is lethal at 10 grams. That's 100 cups of coffee or 185 cans of Mountain Dew. In susceptible people, too much caffeine can trigger nervousness. Caffeine is one of the substances that people prone to panic attacks should avoid. Counselors should ask their clients about their caffeine consumption as sensitivity in excess amounts might create artificial anxiety. Excess caffeine consumption can lower the fertility in women. 350 milligrams per day will not only make it less likely that a woman will get pregnant, but will double the chance of a miscarriage. Excessive caffeine consumption has also been implicated in a woman's developing benign lumps in her breasts. Researchers also feel that caffeine may make it difficult to lose weight because caffeine triggers the release of insulin, which metabolizes sugar and in turn creates a deficit in the blood, which causes hunger. Since there are a number of different hereditary structures that dictate sensitivity and tolerance to caffeine, talking about amounts and effects varies from one individual to another. High caffeine consumers may actually get sleepy when only consuming small amounts of the substance because it activates the adenosine receptor sites. Withdrawal symptoms from caffeine begins after 12 to 24 hours of abstinence and peak after 24 to 48 hours. The symptoms can last from 2 days to a week: throbbing headaches, sleepiness, fatigue, lethargy, depression, decreased alertness, sleep problems, irritability, flu-like symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, muscle pains, or stiffness. Nicotine comes from the leaves of the tobacco plant. The tobacco plant is a member of the nightshade family, which also includes tomatoes, belladonna, henbane, and petunias. In the United States, 90% of the tobacco is delivered to its users as cigarettes. In India, 85% of all men use tobacco in the form of chewing tobacco. Tobacco came to the Old World from the Americas, and it originally was smoked in pipes. In the 18th century, people began chewing the leaves and snorting the powder into their noses as snuff. Smokeless tobacco continued to be the most popular use of tobacco until World War I. The reality is that a lot of men didn't smoke, they chewed tobacco. And so they got to spit a lot. Around World War I, packaged cigarettes became popular in the trenches of Europe. This was possible because cigarette rolling machines improved. Cigarettes used a milder form of tobacco, which allowed deeper inhalation of the tobacco. Mass production produced lower prices. Advertising popularized the product. More aggressive marketing brought the product around the world. Heavy smokers in the United States will smoke 20 to 40 cigarettes per day. U.S. Tobacco users spend $89 billion a year on tobacco products. 24.9% of the population over 12, that's 60.5 million Americans, smoked cigarettes in the past month. 51 million Americans smoke cigarettes every day. 13.6 million Americans smoke cigars every day. 2.2 million Americans smoke tobacco in pipes every day. 7.7 million Americans use smokeless tobacco every day. Smokeless tobacco comes in three forms: moist snuff that is put in the mouth next to the gums, powdered or dry snuff which is drawn up the nose, and loose leaf chew which is put in the mouth and chewed. The powdered dry snuff is not popular in the United States, but it is in other places around the world. The active ingredient in tobacco is nicotine. Nicotine is a highly poisonous alkaloid that is bitter, smelly, and colorless. Tobacco leaves hold 2 to 5% nicotine. Smoking tobacco delivers nicotine to the brain in 5 to 8 seconds. Smokeless tobacco delivers nicotine to the brain in 3 to 8 minutes. Cigarettes contain 10 milligrams of nicotine, but a typical smoker will only get 1 to 3 milligrams in their system with one cigarette. 70 milligrams of nicotine is fatal. Chewing tobacco will deliver 4.5 milligrams of nicotine to the brain, while snuff will deliver 3.5 milligrams. The first cigarette of the day will raise the heart rate by 10 to 20 beats and the blood pressure by 5 to 10 units. Nicotine affects the central nervous system and disrupts the following neurotransmitters: endorphins, epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, and acetylcholine. Nicotine mimics acetylcholine, filling nicotinic acetylcholine receptor sites, exaggerating the cholinergic effect, increasing heart rate, blood pressure, It actually increases your memory and it allows you to learn better. Reflexes, your aggression, sleep, sexual activity, mental acuity. Dopamine makes the smoker feel satisfied and calm. Thus, a cigarette both excites and tranquilizes at the same time. People continue to take in tobacco toxins because it is a social ritual. There is also a ritual despite aspect to the lighting up and smoking. Smoking is perceived as an adult activity. It manipulates your mood by increasing your dopamine. It appears to be rebellious. It is sexually attractive. It controls appetite, leading to weight loss, and it is craved. Nicotine suppresses the appetite and decreases metabolism. The average smoker weighs 6 to 9 pounds lighter than the same size non-smoker. It may be the fear of putting on weight that keeps some smokers from stopping. Smokers also may be self-medicating to combat depression. Smokers are twice as likely as non-smokers to experience major depression. Smokers who have experienced at least one major episode of depression are less likely to succeed in smoking cessation. Nicotine creates an intense craving when a select level is not maintained in the bloodstream and the brain. The mere act of lighting up activates the nucleus accumbens, giving the smoker a sense of reward. The rush is similar to the feeling that a heroin user gets when they relapse after an abstinent period. This use to escape withdrawal symptoms is called negative drug reinforcement. Only a few hours of smoking leads to neural adaptation to the toxicity of the nicotine. The first morning hit after a long night's sleep is said to feel especially rush-like as the individual builds the nicotine level back to their daytime norm. Unlike other drugs, nicotine does not continue to build up a tolerance, but the smoker finds a level of comfort that they attempt to maintain. Withdrawal from nicotine causes headaches, nervousness, fatigue, hunger, severe irritability, poor concentration, depression, increased appetite, sleep disturbances, intense nicotine craving. The individual has experienced a true physiological dependence as the individual has created an excess number of nicotinic acetylcholine receptors that are screaming to be occupied. Without the nicotine to occupy these sites, the result is irritability and discontent. The smoker needs the tobacco to feel normal. Researchers now realize that the feelings of relaxation and well-being that smokers feel when they light up is actually the feeling of having the withdrawal symptoms subside. Nicotine addiction is a more powerful addiction than any other. While 23 million people have tried cocaine, only 600,000 people are weekly users and a rare few on a daily basis. 72 million people have tried marijuana, but only 6.8 million use on a weekly basis and only a fraction on a daily basis. 198 million people have tried alcohol, but only 48 million use it weekly and only 20 million on a daily basis. 162 million people have tried tobacco, 60 million people smoke weekly, and 37 million smoke daily. Nearly 1/4 of the people who try tobacco continue to use the drug daily as compared to the fractions with other drugs and 10% of the people using alcohol. 80% of smokers say they want to quit, 10% want to limit the amount they smoke, only 10% of smokers want to continue, yet 100% do continue to smoke or chew. Other countries have more serious problems with tobacco than the United States. China's use is 50% higher than the United States. England's use is 40% higher than the United States. Japan's use is 50% higher. Globally, 12% of women and 47% of men smoke. There may be a predilection to use tobacco. The DRD2A1 allele is seen as the culprit. A teen who smokes is 3 times more likely to abuse alcohol, 8 times more likely to abuse marijuana, and 22 times more likely to abuse cocaine. Only 8% of black teens use tobacco. 15.7% of Hispanic teens use tobacco. 25.7% of white teens use tobacco. Nicotine contains from 4,000 to 48,000 chemicals. 400 of these are toxins. 69 are known cancer-causing substances. Worldwide, it is estimated that smoking causes 5 million premature deaths per year. 392,000 of these people are in the United States. 264,000 men and 178,000 women. Lung cancer, heart disease, lung disease are all problems of smoking. An additional 50,000 people die from secondhand smoke. 8.6 million Americans have at least one serious illness caused by smoking. It is estimated that a smoker loses 10 years off of their life. Smoking accelerates the process of atherosclerosis by increasing the low-density fats, increasing blood coagulability, triggering cardiac arrhythmias, reducing microrespiratory function by introducing carbon monoxide into the bloodstream. Carbon monoxide has a 230 time affinity, greater affinity for hemoglobin than does oxygen. And tobacco is, of course, a vasoconstrictor. 1/3 of all smoking deaths are due to cardiovascular disease. 35,000 of these are from secondhand smoke. Bronchopulmonary diseases are far more prevalent among smokers than non-smokers. Emphysema, chronic bronchitis, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Children who live with smokers suffer from more asthma, from more colds, from more bronchitis. 80 to 90% of all COPD deaths are due to smoking. Men who smoke are 22 times more likely to develop lung cancer than men who don't. Women who smoke are 12 times more likely to develop lung cancer than women who don't. 85% of men and 75% of women with lung cancer smoke. Equality, women comprised only 26% of lung cancer deaths in 1979. In 2002, they had increased to 42.8% of the deaths. The black lung coffin cover has been breached. And of course, that is a play on feminism, I guess. About 15% of mothers smoke during pregnancy. Nicotine and the byproduct carbon monoxide change some of the positive properties in the blood. Carbon monoxide blocks oxygen transport. Nicotine makes platelets more sticky, increasing the possibility of a clot forming. Babies born to smokers have lower birth weight. They have a higher incidence of sudden infant death syndrome. Women who smoke during pregnancy are twice as likely to miscarry and have spontaneous abortions as non-smokers. Children whose mothers smoked during pregnancy have a 4 times greater chance of having ADHD, also conduct disorder, drug dependence, asthma, chronic bronchitis, and chronic respiratory symptoms. Smokeless tobacco can be as addicting as smoking because tobacco in smokeless tobacco forms contain more nicotine than smoked tobacco. People use more smokeless tobacco when they use. Smokeless tobacco has a higher pH, allowing it to pass into the capillaries more readily. One dip of smokeless tobacco delivers the same amount of nicotine as 3 to 4 cigarettes. At least the dipper is less likely to get lung cancer. Gums are inflamed from use causing more dental problems, higher risk of oral cancer, pharyngeal cancer, esophageal cancer, cheek cancer, and gum cancer. I had a friend, a neighbor, when I was growing up. He decided he was going to chew tobacco because he thought that was cool. He developed cancer of the salivary gland. They had to take out all the muscles on the left side of his face, in his neck. It's not up in his cheek. It's down in his jaw and his neck and his back. So now he can't lift his chin from his chest because he decided he wanted to chew tobacco. The other thing about smokeless tobacco is that they put they put glass in it to cut your gums. It's not glass. What is that stuff? If you, oh, I can't think of it. I've had this problem every time I give this lecture. I can't think of what that stuff. Fiberglass. It's fiberglass. They put fiberglass in snuff in order to cut your gums, and that gets it into your system faster, making it more likely that you'll become addicted to smokeless tobacco. Famous singer of the 50s, Nat King Cole, was one of the first African American TV stars. He was a heavy smoker, and he died of lung cancer at age 45. Leading man of the 60s and 70s, Steve McQueen, starred in such movies as The Great Escape and The Sand Pebbles. He was a heavy smoker all of his life. McQueen died of lung cancer at age 50. One of the blonde bombshells of the 40s and 50s, Betty Grable, was a famous pinup for World War II soldiers. They liked her because of her sexy legs. She was a smoker to keep her figure. Gable died of lung cancer at age 56. Known for his raspy voice and tough guy image, Humphrey Bogart starred in films in the 40s and 50s in such films as Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon. His heavy smoking caught up with him in 1956 when he died of lung cancer at age 57. Known as the youngest Beatle, George Harrison was first to die naturally at 58 from lung cancer. John Lennon was murdered in 1980. Harrison was a smoker and a toker most of his life, and he died at age 58. And this is George Harrison right here. Benefits of quitting using tobacco. 20 minutes after quitting, blood pressure and pulse rate drop, and the feet and hands warm to normal temperatures. People that smoke, especially people that smoke chronically, have cold extremities because it's a vasoconstrictor. So it restricts the blood flow to your extremities. Within 8 hours, the carbon monoxide level in the blood drops and oxygen levels increase, both to normal. When I was working in the Air Force, people would come in and we thought they might have carbon monoxide poisoning. In order to check, you've got to draw blood, and you've got to compare that blood with people who are chronic smokers because they have chronic carbon monoxide poisoning. So what we used to do, we had I had a colleague that was a chain smoker, and we would compare his blood with the person that we thought might have carbon monoxide, and they would compare it with my blood because my blood, I don't smoke at all. So mine was the negative control. His was the positive control, and then we would compare it with the person that we thought might have carbon monoxide poisoning. Within 24 hours, the risk of sudden heart attack decreases. Within 48 hours, the nerve endings adjust to the absence of nicotine while the sense of taste and smell returns. Within 1 week, breathing improves and constricted blood vessels begin to relax. Within 2 to 12 weeks, circulation improves, lung function increases up to 30%, and the complexion begins looking healthy again. Within 1 to 9 months, fatigue, coughing, sinus congestion, and shortness of breath decrease, and lungs increase their ability to handle mucus. Within 1 year, the risk of coronary heart disease has been cut in half. Within 5 years, the heart disease rate has become that of a non-smoker. Within 10 years, the lung cancer rate drops to just above that of a non-smoker. Within 10 to 15 years, the disease rate has returned to that of a non-smoker. And that is the end of talking about uppers. We talked about caffeine, we talked about tobacco, we talked about methamphetamine and cocaine. Some really serious things, not the caffeine, of course, but everything else can lead to a premature death, which is unfortunate.